Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Atletico de Marbella podcast. My name is Andrew Clark, and like I said in the last episode, this is a bit of a journey. It's a bit of a journey with this club who have just been promoted to the third division, or the fifth tier. The way that the Spanish Federation sort of works is that there's obviously La Liga, Segunda División, and then it goes into the third division, and then it splits off into regional divisions. Obviously, because Spain is such a big country, travel between each team is quite difficult. So they've obviously made it into more regional, kind of similar to when you get past the conference, you go to the conference north and south and that sort of thing. And we'll go through that in a separate podcast. That will be sort of episode 4 or 5 when I get round to making them. So this one is about the history of the actual name of the club is Club Deportivo Atletico de Marbella Balompié. Now, I'm not going to say that my Spanish is fantastic. John, who is the vice president of Atletico de Marbella, is giving me some basic Spanish lessons. For those who don't know me, I did French at school, so Spanish is a little bit out of my depth, but I'm willing to learn. And again, this is a journey. So back in 1997, a former club called Atletico Marbella were playing in the Spanish second division, the Segunda Division, and they were owned by the mayor of Marbella and the owner of Atletico Madrid, Jesus Gil. So when that club folded in 1997, UD Marbella, or now known as Marbella FC, were created in the immediate after effect of that. But in 2010, a Phoenix club, Atletico de Marbella, were created by a group of fans of over 200 members who wanted a new club. And with the badge that they have, which you'll see in the top right-hand corner of this podcast, and then obviously at the start of the podcast, it honours the original club. On July 1st, 2010, Atletico de Marbella was created. Okay, they were registered with the Royal Andalusian Football Federation, and it all came from a group of Marbella fans that there were other ways to manage a football club within the city. With the crest, the colours of the kit, a tribute to the much beloved club of Atletico Marbella. They set out with great enthusiasm, and they started in the lowest tier of Spanish football. Okay. But nearly 200 members, as I've mentioned here before, supported the project in this city. Okay, so Marbella obviously isn't really a massive footballing hotbed. Everybody knows this. However, having done my research into this, there are a lot of clubs in that area. It's actually probably one of the more packed club areas for football. You've got teams like San Pedro. You've got teams like Marbella. UD Maracina, who Atletico de Marbella beat in the final of the playoffs. You know, there's a lot of clubs. Malaga are obviously huge in that area. So this club is on the rise. As I've mentioned previously, they won a playoff final in the Division of Honor. Now, Division of Honor basically means local clubs in a regional league, sort of like the Southern League in this country, or the Ismaston League, and leagues like that, where teams aren't fully professional, they're still semi-professional in this case, and they play on a Sunday or a Saturday, depending on where their fixtures fall. And it's really, really exciting. So we're going to start with last season. So Pepe Bermudez is the manager. He's still currently the manager. They had their best season in their history. In 16 years, the best season they've ever had. So they have achieved promotion to the Tercera Division, which is under the Royal Federation in Spain. They finished in the playoff positions, despite the fact that they were deducted 2 points after an issue with another team who admitted that they were in the wrong. However, the Andalusian Federation decided that both teams must be punished as a result. If you get a chance, please look. I know I did commentary, but there's a lot of shorts on there of the ups and downs of that game. Now, it's absolutely a testament to this club that they have managed to get themselves into the tier that they're in. But they want to go higher. But this is about their history. So the season before that, under Jose Maria Paredes, they achieved promotion by default and competed in the top division of the Division of Honor. Okay. They also secured qualification for the preliminary round of the Copa del Rey. So the Copa del Rey is the Spanish FA Cup, if you will. It's absolutely massive for clubs of this size to try and get one of the big boys. And I think it's really important that they're given credit, you know, and I think when we go through the rest of the history of this club, it will really, really start to show. I'm just going to go back to the first season they took place. So they were in the first provincial category in Group 4 of Malaga. Okay, so I've mentioned Malaga before. Malaga is a huge area. Andalusia is a huge area, but in this part, it's mainly Malaga down to sort of the Gibraltar area, if you will. I'm not versed in Spanish culture, but I do have a belief of the Costa del Sol. They actually went 10 games unbeaten at the start of the season. However, they couldn't maintain it until the end of the season because they finished 5th. Okay, which for a new club is absolutely outstanding. And when you think about this is a brand new club, this would be like FC United of Manchester. Obviously, Wimbledon are a different kettle of fish because they started with a bit more of a maintaining. But this would be like a team who are not massively financially backed, but they start making their way up the leagues. So in the second season, they began with even more enthusiasm. They had another change of manager. They practically assembled a new squad. They ended up in the regional preferente category, achieved 3 days before the end of the league. And they won the league by 9 clear points in their second season. Which is absolutely insane, by the way. Let me just point this out. Then they moved, they stayed in that league. The squad very much didn't change that season, and they finished 6th in the table in the league above. Again, very respectable position for a team that is only at this point 2 to 3 years old. They come into the next season, and this is the 4th year, and actually they struggled that season. And again, this all comes down to, you know, if you're looking at it from a completely different viewpoint, this is a brand new club. Okay, they're in their 4th season as a club, as an entity. They're starting from the bottom and making their way up, and they finished 8th. Okay, modest is what it says on their website. I would say they need to give themselves more credit. 2014, 2015, there was a change in the club's presidency. David Franco Jimenez took over from David Rodriguez Montes as president, and there was changes at the top of management as well. With them, they then made a couple of new signings, and but they managed to still finish 8th in the league. Again, it's all about consistency here. They come into the next season, and another change on the bench. I'm not sure if the hierarchy were a little bit like Roman Abramovich and it was a hire and fire situation. They wanted to move up in the leagues. So aiming to finish in the top 8 this season, would secure a place in the higher division as they were restructuring the Andalusian Federation. They achieved on the last day one of the places that gave them access to the new category in the Primera Andalusia in the next season. So again, a bit more stability, another promotion, and we're into the 6th season and they've been promoted 3 times. So, they are making progress. So we then go over to the 2016-2017. So another change on the bench. This was down to not being able to renew the contract of Carlos Guzman and Romulo Barcola. So they hired a guy called Rafael Gonzalez Urquelles. And then his assistant, Kiko, was used to face an unknown category. They had some higher level additions. They made more additions. The club kit changed slightly from what it is today. They ended up in a commendable 4th position in the table. So again, they're starting to build here. And this is what I'm trying to do with this channel, is that I'm trying to build everything forward. We then get on to 2018, and this is undoubtedly, in their own words, the worst season in the club's short history. They suffered where they nearly suffered their first ever relegation. It just didn't turn out how they expected. Where the team was struggling with relegation throughout the whole season, they actually secured their survival on the last game of the season with a 1-1 draw. The Royal Andalusian Football Federation dismissed an appeal filed by the club. The Malaga Federation awarded another team a 1-match forfeiture, which consequently their 3 points in the penultimate league match. However, getting the point did mean that they survival secured. However, they were then unfairly relegated, again in their own words, when 3 points were awarded to the other team, which meant that they went down. 2 weeks later, through its delegation in Malaga, the club informed Atletico de Marbella that 2 vacancies resulting from promotions of Cartoma and Atletico de Coin from the Honor division corresponded with application 14. This is a lot of information to try and read. So they actually were kept up because of a committee, even though they were relegated, and they were put back up. The next season, David Franco Jimenez was re-elected as the club president, and Rafael Urquelles was replaced by a guy on here who's called Salvador Gambero Macias, also known as Boris. I'm very interested in that because I would like to know how on earth he got Boris from that. The average age decreased because they brought in some younger, fresher players. They had a great season fighting for the top spots and finished again in 4th place. Very respectable. So then we get on to the COVID season. So COVID season here, Gambero Boris remains as manager, and it stayed kind of the same from last season with just an addition of a couple of high caliber players to aim for a top 4 finish, which would qualify them for the newly established playoffs and promotion to Division de Honor. The team finished 1st place in the standings, but dropped to 5th on match day 26 when the competition was suspended for COVID. The league championship had not been completed, and the Andalusian Federation upheld the standings at the time of suspension, and they finished 4 places behind 4th place, missing out on promotion by the skin of their teeth. When the season's retained, they solidified their teams at the top of the table, but again, because of COVID, it was a very mismatched league, so they demonstrated competitiveness and laid groundwork for the future. On to 21-22. In 21-22, Boris had gone. Very sad about that. I'm not going to lie. I was hoping Boris would still be in and around, but they hired a guy called Carlos Gobantes. the team secured a couple of reinforcements. They had a solid campaign. Throughout the season, they strengthened their position at the top of the table. And again, it doesn't say if they were promoted or not. I'm sure we're about to find out. So then in 22-23, they became affiliated with Marbella Parecio, merging the name and the crest, and it became known as Atletico Marbella Parecio. So the thing with with Parecio, and I'm just going to point this out, is as I follow them on Instagram and I follow them, as much as I possibly can. They have 600 youth team players playing at this young side. Okay, they have over 600. Sorry, and that is insane. That is one of the big things about this club, is that they are bringing through their own youth, and we'll get to that when we talk about the squad in the next podcast. So midway through the season, there was a change on the sideline, and a youth coach called Zexu Rodriguez arrived to take charge for the remainder of the season. They finished as league champions, which gained them access to the promotion playoffs. However, they were beaten in the playoffs and therefore not promoted. This is where the next one here is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting. So they had their biggest win, a 9-1 win against AD Malacca, in addition to winning the Copa Provincia Andalucía with a 3-0 win over CD Mijas, which granted them access to the Club Copa Automática Andalucía. After 24 matches and a defeat in the round of the 32 Cup, the team finished second in the league and again was beaten by the same team, actually, Cartmar. So they must have not been promoted. So under the management, so Jose Maria Parejas has returned. Okay, he was a coach, obviously, beforehand. And we've talked about this season already. So I think it kind of gives you an idea of what it is. So what's next? Well, you find out in the next episode. Until next time, see you soon.